Welcome to Sober Talk. I'm Dennis and I have lived experience of alcohol. If you or anyone you know is struggling with alcohol, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or check out their website on aa.org.au. I'll just run through the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other. They must solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety.
I'm an alcoholic. My story started like with just about most of the alcoholics I know, around 14, 15. I lived in a family which was, ordinary. That's probably the best description. Parents did what they could, gave me love and in their own way. Maybe father kind of couldn't show it enough, but I didn't have a really reason to feel that I don't fit, because that was the problem right from the start. As long as I remember, I never fit. I never felt comfortable with other people. When I discovered alcohol around 15, I guess, I felt like that's after drinking, I felt like that's the way I should be all the time. Unfortunately, I only felt like that when I drank. So I drank a lot, and whenever I could, once I moved out of the house, then there was no restrictions. I could drink 7 days a week, and I had 2 or 3 weeks benders, and things kind of subsided a little bit once I migrated to Australia. Was when I was 26. I discovered pot, and that kind of I guess. Well, it was just another addition. It was another medicine, in inverted commas, to fix my mind, to stop being tormented by my own brain. I sort of, felt like I could stop at any time, right through the whole in the early days, and I did, there were periods I didn't drink, but I never knew what was wrong with me. I've tried various solutions, doctors and psychologists, psychiatrists. I've tried suicide. I've been in psychiatric hospital. It was, there was always, no matter, how well I was doing, and I was doing surprisingly well professionally. I had a family, I had 3 kids. On the surface, it looked like, I was doing all right, but inside I was a mess, right through my whole life. And that caught up with me, that caught up with me in the mid-50s when my marriage fell apart, and I started drinking full time, stopped doing my profession, which I loved. I locked myself at home, picked up the job which didn't require much thinking. It just gave me the cash to keep drinking every day, 7 days a week. And at the beginning I was saying to myself, it's because marriage fell apart, and that was my excuse at that time. And I was making promises myself, because I had lived with my ex for for 3 years under the same roof till our youngest child left home after doing university. That was the deal, and that was horrible because I stayed under the same roof with the person which I felt at that time was the reasons for my downfall. And because at that time, when I was drinking right through my life, I was always blaming everything and everybody, people I've worked with, my wife, my parents, I was digging in the past, and my father was responsible. I was blaming the whole world, but I didn't for the way I felt, but I've never looked at myself, so that 3 years were really kind of where I really slipped really deep into drinking. And then she moved out, and that was the deadline when I'm supposed to be stopping drinking, and the deadline passed, and I kept drinking, and got to the point that I made a trial stops. I would stop for a week, I stopped for 3 days, I stopped for 2 days, and then it was drinking. I'll make a promise myself tonight. I'll make a promise myself in the morning, but by afternoon I'll be drinking again. And I knew I can't stop drinking. So I can't stop drinking. I got to the point that I knew that this is it. That there is no power. That I have no power to stop myself drinking. And that's when I realized I reached end of the road. I reached that there was no hope. I knew it was just a matter of time when I will either develop the health problems or I didn't even had the opportunity of I didn't even have that choice of killing myself anymore, because I tried that in the past. And I failed, I felt like I failed all my life, and I was just waiting there. It was basically a waiting game, drinking and waiting to see the end, and AA, I look at the website, I look at it more out of curiosity, I guess, at the time. I look at the AA website, and I did a questionnaire there, and I came on the top of the class. I had a high score. I had a really high score, and I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. I'll go to the meeting. I found the local meeting Saturday. Went to the meeting. I've heard few shares, and then when my time came, I said. Hi, I'm Roman. I think I'm an alcoholic. So on that first day, something happened. I still can't say what happened. There was a meeting the next day. I went there, and I said, I'm Roman. I'm an alcoholic. I knew that I am like the people who were at the time in those rooms. What I've heard, the stories, I was identified with those stories. Their stories was my story, in one way or another, and that was the beginning of the miracle. I felt so exhilarated. I made the commitment very early in my sobriety. That I will believe that I will unconditionally surrender myself to AA, and I was coming back to that promise, because the miracle of sobriety, which happened to me, I allow me to believe in AA, unconditionally, and that was challenged a lot, in various meetings and in various shares, by other members, where people did challenge AA, But I learned very quickly that challenge is it was just immature sobriety. I think on behalf of of those people, because for me, the AA is, for me, AA worked, right? So I can't question it, I've got to follow it to the T. And still staying at that beginning, the beginning was fantastic, I can remember, I think it was about 4 or 5 months, I was on such a high, because all of a sudden, I got my hope back, I got my life back, I didn't have a headache, I started feeling healthy, I started eating healthy, sleeping healthy, and it felt like, the job's been done, I'm cured, right, I'm released from the bondage of alcohol, but after this initial excitement, I realized that this is just the beginning of the journey. That there's a lot ahead of me to sort out, and the longer I'm sober, the more there is ahead, to sort out. But it's a sort of like, I'm treating that work like something. I mean, I'm not questioning it. For me, it's like brushing the teeth. I don't question it, right? It's there. It's part of my life now. I remember somebody saying it in the meetings that, if I was diagnosed with terminal disease, right, and I would have to, go for the procedure every day to the hospital, would I choose to do that, or would I not, right? And I know on my part, the answer would be yes. I would choose that procedure, right? So AA is like that procedure for me. If I stop doing AA, I'm gonna die. I know that. I had tastes of it during COVID, where I've distanced myself from AA for one reason or another, no live meetings, etc. And I felt how my sobriety is shrinking, is disappearing. Likely the live meeting came back, and took me couple of months to crawl back to where I left off. And I'm doing this recording at the end of another step in my sobriety. I'm finishing I'm at the end of the big tag-along, or there was actually 2 or 3 tag-alongs, but plus a couple of rallies, and I took off on that trip because I knew I need to take my involvement and my work in AA a step further. I felt that doing meetings, because I normally do at least 5 to 6 meetings a week. I realized that I can't delay doing the real work, steps. By that I mean steps, because I always knew that steps is a core of this program, but I was looking for excuses not to do it. I didn't want to give it away, my control. The control of my life, or of the world, which knowing, I know I failed controlling my life, but my ego is still insisting that it can control my life and the life of everybody and everything around me. It's still so strong. So in my sobriety through the long period of 4.5 years, I was looking for excuses not to do the steps. What I was concentrating on, I was looking in other people's share for the excuse not to do it, right? So I was feeling like I'm off the hook when I heard that somebody done steps after 4 years or 5 years or 6 years or whatever, right? I've seen that's an excuse for me not to do it, and allow me to procrastinate. But I reached a point before this trip I did that I felt I was missing something. I knew I need to do more work. And I've started on Tagalong, and on Tagalong people at the beginning were sharing and saying how much it changed their lives. On the previous Tagalogs they went on. I thought, I found it hard to believe at the beginning, because I thought, well, how the bit of a holidays and with some sharing with AA members can change my life. But now, 2 months down the track, I realized that this massive submerge in AA, 24/7, talking to the members, having impromptu meetings and doing rallies, really made a shift in my work in AA. I now have a sponsor. I'm just about to start doing step 4, and I believe that I'm progressing. That I'm progressing onto the level where I should be. I should be to solidify my sobriety. That's basically what it's about. I feel that I was lucky. I was lucky that I got to this point, and I didn't bust. Because I know how weak I am still. How still my ego is ruling my thinking and my actions. I still haven't given myself and my soul to the higher power, whatever it is. I'm still working out on the concept of higher power, but I know by the end of the 12 steps I will refine it. I know that that higher power will start playing the big role in my life, because at the moment I submit myself to it. I found the higher power early in the piece, but it is kind of intellectualized. It's not. It's I don't made the shift on a spiritual level, and I know I've got to go on my knees, and I could simply go on my knees and tick it off, right? I've done it. I went on the knees. I pray to higher power, but I know it wouldn't be honest. I know that I still deep down don't want to give away control, but knowing enough about the steps and knowing that if I honestly and with the full trust in the program, if I do those steps, I will take it no job. I will refine the higher power. I will stop living on the sort of old software. I will get loaded with the new ideas, with the new concepts, how to live, and I will actually follow up on that. Because right from the start, when I got sober, everything what I received, all the suggestions, how initially when I had problems with cravings and all the suggestions which I got from the members, from the shares, it all worked. Everything what I've adopted in my life worked, and I know that if I adopt 12 steps to its full extent, it will take me into a higher gear in AA. All in all, I'm so grateful to be on the journey, in AA, because it's I've been hearing the best is yet to come. This slogan. I love slogans at the beginning. I still love them. The best is yet to come, and it does. It's like I'm asking myself, wow. Is that, is that can get any better? But it does, the next day it does better, there's something else happens. and it does get better. You know, in my sobriety, I did a bit of traveling, you know, and the way when I used to travel, I used to get to know the countries and places through the prism of the local pub, you know, or local watering hole. That's the first place I would search for, right? Now when I travel, I search for AA meetings. Yeah, my origins are Polish. You know, I lived in Poland. I went to Poland when I was about 6 months sober, still quite fragile in my sobriety. But you know what? Going there and start speaking Polish again after whatever 35 or 40 years of not doing it was a little bit daunting. But you know, few minutes into the meeting, I knew I'm back with the family, you know, with the AA family, you know, visiting some godforsaken little village close to Ukrainian border, and meeting with the local members there and being, you know, welcomed with open arms like we knew each other our whole lives. You know, it was so beautiful. And the same thing happened when I went on holidays to Bali, you know, meeting with people there, you know, all over the place, you know, wherever. Like on this tag along, we've been traveling in the back of Berg, so to speak, and you know, in small towns, and you meet locals there, and again you walk in, you shake hands, and you feel like you know them, like you always knew them. You know that they speak your language, and they know that they understand you. They understand, you know, what pain you've been through, and what challenges we might still face, and even now being sober. You know, and I was asking myself, you know, what in early days, what the long-term sober members get from the person like me, you know what I mean? Somebody who's been sober for 30, 40 years, what do they get out of me, you know? But I understand now, you know, it's you know, alcoholism is the disease which will never leave me, you know, and I need to hear the stories of newcomers, so I'm vigilant, you know. I don't get settle on laurels and feel that, you know, I've done it, because it's an endless road, you know. It's a road which I'll have to follow till I die, and guess what, you know, I'm really happy to follow that road, because my life is so stable now. Even when there is you know, stuff going on around me, I'm like a sheep, you know, with a good stabilizing system. You know, that stabilizing system is the AA, you know. It let me go through whatever storms I sailed through. I'm coming out on the other end unscathed, you know what I mean? I'm learning to live, you know, and learning to take whatever life brings my way. I don't let it to destroy my life, you know, like it did in the past. And I'm not destroying my life, you know. I'm not creating stories, you know. I'm not fantasizing about the future, you know. I'm not lamenting about the past. I'm more and more, the longer I'm in the system, the longer I'm in AA, the more I feel stable, the more I feel like I know how to do life. Yeah, I am very grateful member of AA. I'm so grateful. I don't know that I'll ever be able to repay AA. You know, the death which you know, and what I received from AA, and that, you know, that is going to come. You know, the service, because the service is such a big part. I know I've got to throw myself into deeper. You know, to fully be part of AA. So I'm very grateful. Thank you.
We have local meetings for the full week in the local area. Monday's gala meeting at 8 o'clock. Tuesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Wednesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Thursday is Two Wells at 8 o'clock. And Friday is Salisbury at 8 o'clock. There's a meeting at Daveron Park at 12 o'clock, and on Sunday there's a meeting in Salisbury at 7 o'clock, and many other meetings in the area. For details of your local meetings, please phone 1300 22 22 22. And once again, if anyone you know is struggling with alcohol issues, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 22 22 22. The website is aaSouthAustralia.org.au.